There we go. I should have just put glasses on earlier, especially ones that are just clear glass. Considering I sell glass, it's probably good for business to promote the product. I think they just kind of make me look a little bit more intelligent. I wanted to reach out politely to Jordan Peterson. I just listened to your little snippet with Piers Morgan, and I have a little input to make, if I may. I think when it comes to Trump, his persona, his very large public persona, is one of leadership of men, majoritively. And now, wonderfully, he's digging into his grandfatherly role of appealing to all, and with the sensitivity like you guys mentioned. But his what you described as bullying is camaraderie. He's building morale in the people because we've just been through hell. He's toughening them up. He's skateboarding. And he's spanning the emotional depth of the entire country, which is brilliant. His thin skin, as you described it, is lowering himself. One thing I always look for if somebody meets my children, if someone lowers themselves to greet my children in the eye, I immediately trust that person more. And I believe that Donald Trump is the type of person that would lower himself to greet any of my children in the eye. I think this is what you're seeing and describing as thin-skinned, but it's vulnerability. And it's vulnerability on behalf of the gigantic population cohort that feel helpless. And so he's spanning that territory in order to unify a broken country. My personal opinion is that he's surprising himself right now. His close call with death, it has invigorated all aspects. There's now a veteran aspect, which I believe maybe he himself felt inadequate because he had not faced military combat when so many of his father's generation and his peers had. And I know he was in the military, but he hadn't seen gunfire. And so I think this has strengthened his resolve and validated his commitment to the country. And then the empathy he's showing and the humility to lower himself, despite being a very wealthy man, despite being a very famous man, despite being a very powerful man, to lower himself to the common man, and instead of cries of revolution, it's a uniting cry emulating some of the presidents you mentioned, with Lincoln, Washington, but of a new age and a new pacified form of masculinity. He's addressing all the key oversteps by the Democratic Party, and he's stepping back to a middle ground that is wonderful. I think most people 20 years ago would have described Trump as a left-leaning. He's a TV star. He's a, you know what I mean? He's hardly a conservative. But the one thing he has become conservative in is his mannerisms. And I think that's because he perhaps didn't think he deserved the role he was in, and now he knows he does. And now America knows that he does. Yeah. I hope you don't mind me just butting in, just quietly. I'll just kind of excuse me, can we just have a little word for a second? In this media age, we have a terrible kind of conundrum where we are forced to be performers and forced to be very present and very visible, and I'm sure you both understand this. And there is an aspect of play to it. And I think he's found his feet. I think he's found his groove. I think he's got his family around him, amazingly supportive, and it looks like a family. It doesn't look like a corporation. And I think that is hitting home. And whether you're a grandfather or a father or a son, and I know they're all masculine archetypes, but I think in this period right now, that's what we need. We need level-headed, courageous, committed men. And for the American archetype of people, for the stereotypical American, which is broad and wide-ranging, I think he's finding a perfect middle ground, and I think he's speaking the language of the land perfectly. And I think as long as the other nations just keep their eyes out for guardrails and pick our fights wisely and hit, if we see it hit it straight away. I think he's fast on his feet, he's fast with his words, he's fast to pivot, and that's our job right now, is to guide his ego, now balanced by facing death, to the desired location that I think we all want to get to, and as he's out in front. I have no doubts in that, and with the other nations of incredibly intelligent, proactive, passionate, committed to their own causes. I think with his team that he's got around him, he's now not just talking, but he's listening. And so we've just got to get very good at hitting. If there's a big stray off to one, we just go there. Oh, no, hey. Over here. Hey, get back. Like a big old Texan bull. And I think, again, in a country like America, where there's the cowboy archetype that has seen a huge resurgence with this kind of masculine pioneer man of the land thing going on. His large, boisterous personality would have been just as at home on a ranch, I think you call them. Here we call them stations. And that's probably another concern of his, maybe in the past, because he's a businessman. It's almost like there's a softness to business, despite it being cutthroat and vicious. There's a difference from playing golf on the weekend to, riding a horse and rounding up 1,000 cattle and things like that. But I think he's hitting that as well. So I think he feels now a part of the country. He feels welcomed by the country. He feels like a part, like ready to lead it with all aspects, rather than just the stereotypical New York business entrepreneur, businessman, builder, developer, billionaire. He's now as much as anyone can be, he's the everyman of the United States, which is probably the massive difficulty of having 50 states. I think it's something that any of our European counterparts, except maybe King Charles, could not possibly understand. There's so many specific regional identities in that country, because they are so different. That's 50 countries, basically, he's overseeing. He's got to find the middle ground, and I think that's what you both have maybe described as shortcomings. I think that is a sign of humility in this moment, and that was always everyone's concern. As, hey, is this guy going to be humble? Is he humble to advice? And perhaps he's never had the opportunity to do that, except maybe the military, and maybe this close call with death has sparked up that military, because I guarantee you in the military he was disciplined and followed orders and and was one of the guys, was one of the men. And I think this is the moment where we get to see that he's quite comfortable in that role and out the front, and that's exactly what the United States needs as a president right now. So yeah, thank you if you've listened to it. Thank you for taking the time. There's a fly. We've got a few of them down here. I'd like to see both of you encourage this type of thing. Invite people in. Respond to your viewers. This is social media. This is what I've told all my politicians here. Constantly, all the newspapers here. This is a two-way street now. And I am committed to, keeping a certain feel about it, but I'm also a performer. I'm an actor. I'm a, jester of sorts. So we're going to see extremes of that arrive, and we need something like an indicator, like a little, in movies you've got a little cigarette burn up the top and you're in a movie. If people are playing to the crowd, if people are trying to do a performance, we need a little indicator that's, hey, this is a performance. Because I don't think we're quite ready to just, obviously this is serious, this is real, I'm presenting as I am. There's no character, there's no performance, apart from the glasses, but that's just an aesthetic thing to display that. That's what I use personally, but sometimes I don't think it's enough. Then we can find a kind of middle ground between the old school and the new school that's obviously going to emerge. And and not have too much on ramp, because we need shorter on ramps, but we also need to encourage the full capacity of people's capabilities and their, and the full canvas that we have access to now with these technologies, and that includes feedback. And so I think it's like, I don't know how many video replies you guys are getting, but maybe even one a week. That's the door. That's opening the door to feedback. It's a bit like Q&A at the end of a lecture. And I know, Jordan, you've got a paywall university, which I'm waiting for some funds to arrive, and as soon as I do, I will be straight in there. But just to get it going, I think pivotal time here where we can spark off a bit of a renaissance, and coming from someone who's been on the listening side for a lot of years now, I'd like to see that on-ramp get a little bit shorter. Obviously at a steady, stable speed, but just a little bit shorter for passionate individuals that are willing to push the boundaries of political discourse into the future, because it's a certainty. We're going to have individuals that are going to be spinning a lot of plates and trying a lot of things, and so we need to get more forgiving with failure and understand that we're skateboarding here. And as a skateboarder, as a surfer, it's 1 out of 10, maybe, if you're lucky, that you land. It's usually about 1 in 100. So that's obviously going to, if we're wanting that passion that comes from that commitment to perfection, we're also going to have to start accepting failures, which means politically correct failures. Political correctness failures, rather than this hate speech and misinformation. It's like, hey, we got to try a lot of things. You got to throw a lot of stuff at the wall to see what sticks. We're not getting coached individually here. We're fighting against an algorithm and a computer system and a people that are kind of stunted, very conditioned by one-way media for lots of a couple of centuries now, isn't it? So yeah, that's just some feedback from a committed listener and a big fan of both of yours. There's the bit of flattery at the end there. Never hurt anyone, but I'm serious. You guys have been more helpful than I can even say. Got me through some very dark times, and have been wonderful examples of how to operate in this space. So thank you both. Oh no! Oh, my secret identity is